Welcome back to Short Time with Vin and Dave. Vin Ebenau, Dave Crossan with you here on Sunday morning on 94.3 The Point. And we've brought on another special guest, her second appearance on the show.
Yes,
you know,
glad to have her back.
We start giving out awards on the way out for people who've had multiple appearances. It is Regina Mullen of Manalapan, who suffered an unthinkable loss about a year ago now of her son Kyle, 24-year-old Kyle Mullen, who just finished up Hell Week with the U.S. Navy SEALs out near San Diego, and quickly passed away right after that. And we had Regina on the show back in July of last year here on Short Time to discuss kind of what was going on at that point, what happened then, what she knew at that point as well. And we had asked her to come back for an update and to also continue to celebrate Kyle's life as well. So, Regina, before we discuss anything, we want to welcome you back onto the show here Sunday morning and in person as well.
Thanks.
Thank you for being here.
So I'm struggled to kind of come up with the words. So I came up with unthinkable. Certainly can't relate myself, and I know Dave's said that as well, to your loss, what you were feeling last year, and then certainly after it hit the 1 year mark of it all, just how difficult of a time has it been just this month, a year into you doing diligently into looking into answers and looking into what happened and why. Just what has this all been like for you lately?
I think as time goes on, it actually hurts worse, to be honest with you, because they were supposed to investigate the SEALs, investigate themselves. Then they were going to give me a briefing, and then it was canceled because they get a do-over. And I tell them my son doesn't get his life a do-over. So they get a do-over because their investigation was basically they were blaming him for his own death. They were speculating steroids, which they planted in the media, which was very upsetting to me because I was getting horrific messages through Facebook Messenger calling me, him a cheater and me a horrible mother. So that was horrible for the Navy.
Oh, yeah.
And then I had a line of duty investigation. Because the big Navy now is taking over the investigation that the SEALs couldn't do themselves. Then I had a line of duty investigation, and, I asked for Congress to be there. Chris Smith was helping me. And at first they told the Chief of Staff that it was their policy that Congress couldn't go. And then I said, ask for the writing of that policy. Sure enough, they didn't have a writing. They were lying to Congress. So they got to go, which I was glad that they were supportive of me because during the line of duty investigation, obviously I saw a lot of discrepancies and questions of why they didn't save my son's life when they had plenty of opportunities. Their medical staff was there on site, and his oxygen was 84% at one point, and then another hour and a half later it was still only 86%. With crackling lungs, which means there's fluid in his lungs, which the only way to detect pneumonia is by a chest x-ray, and anyone standing there should have gave him that opportunity to save his life, but they didn't. So now it still stands that the big Navy is still not completed it, or it's completed, I'm told, and it had to get signed off on 2 levels, and then a 3rd level, which they don't give me a date yet as to when I'm going to get the briefing on the command investigation. Supposedly, maybe people will get in trouble. I'm kind of losing faith with that because I was tipped off that the commander was getting a lateral move. They have this thing in the Navy called a selection board,
okay,
where they vote basically who gets promoted where. And instead of going through that board, they were going to kind of sidestep him and to some job in Washington, D.C., where then in 2 years he'd be able to become admiral. So even with Congress there, though, when I was getting that line of duty investigation, I was asking them if the admiral, before he retired the Thursday night, if he had, I called it an admiral mast with the Commander Geary, that's who was in charge of BUDS training, and they were denying it twice until I got really irate, and I said, you mean to me, Thursday night, 8 o'clock, he didn't go there with his lawyer? And then in front of Congress, oh, yeah, well, he did. They were almost like lying, and that's why it came out in the news that 2 people got reprimanded, but it's not really a reprimand. It's called a letter of censure. And basically, they wouldn't tell me what it said on the letter, and it's really just a letter in their file, which basically does nothing. That's not discipline in my eyes. So right now it stands. I'm not briefed on the investigation. Nobody's in trouble. I think they just kind of move them around within the Navy, and that's kind of where it stands right now. And I'm told that it's difficult to even sue the military because of a thing called Ferris Doctrine, which that's what people could do, is write to Congress or anyone in Congress throughout the country, is tell them that Congress needs to define incidents of service, because that's why these atrocities are happening all throughout the military, all branches, the stories that I've heard from women out there. It's really, really sickening. And the people who perpetrate the harm on the individuals that pass away or just get harmed or abuse of power, they don't get in trouble because they keep protecting them by the wording incidents of service. But the way my son died is not incidents of service. That's sheer medical neglect, and he should have been alive today.
What have recent conversations been like, I guess, if any, let's just say within the last couple months, with anybody in the military, NCIS, the Navy? Have you gotten much information, if anything, out of?
No. Nope. My liaison that I just wanted an updated form, because it says pending death, their death certificate. It doesn't have the actual cause written on it. And that just, he had money in some savings account. It's not a lot, but that's for me to get it. I mean, it's probably less than $1,000. They make next to zero for money. Mm-hmm. So.
And you mentioned Congressman Chris Smith before, who, for those out there who don't know, represents a portion of Monmouth and Ocean counties down in Washington. What conversation, not even the last couple of weeks or whatever, but what kinds of conversations have you had with Congressman Smith? What has he said that he would work on or look into?
Well, he wrote that bill. It's in Kyle's name for the medical care during training, basically for all military. And I didn't want to make it a political thing, left or right. But, I mean, Andy Kim did help me initially. He spoke to the Secretary of Navy asking, what's going on with this. And he helped address it. And then Chris Smith really was my area at the time. And he definitely was, spearheading it and following up with the Navy and really helping me immensely. And he heard actually from a man that was secured Hell Week with my son, who now finally is medically separated. But he was the only one of the 20 men that secured Hell Week with my son that basically stood up to the commander. And, they tried to dishonorable discharge him and do really bad things towards him. But he is medically separated right now or discharged. But they all have a lot of lifelong medical injuries from the training itself. Many of the men. It's terrible.
Yeah. With any number of those related situations.
But they say, people will go, oh, well, he signed up for that. And that's not true because, it's glorified in the movies and the books that the medical team's going to be there and they were supposed to have protocols. What happened is, under this command, the bar was raised of how long do you stay in the water? Because I have asked, how long is too long before you get hypothermia? How long is too long?
Sure.
How cold was the water? Do they know what the bacteria level is? And that's a whole nother area where the bacterial level is super high in that water out there because some sewage plant from Mexico is deteriorated into the water, and it's known our government has given tons of money there. I don't know how many millions or whatever the amount is, and Chris Smith verified that. I'm right with that. So even when I was getting my line of duty investigation, I said, well, what was the bacterial level of the water?
Sure.
I had pneumonia. I don't know if it's from that. And I get no. They said, oh, it's checked. Who checked it? What's the qualifications? What was the bacteria? They don't tell me an answer. I ask what's their training, the medical team, They don't tell you that either. Where are they trained? Who are they? They don't tell you anything.
Wow.
It's terrible. The way it's run is so terrible. Nobody should join until there's protocols. And I want outside, independent oversight, not just the big Navy, because that's still, I said, so you have the crime family investigate themselves. That doesn't go so well, so let's call in Cousin Vinny. That's the big Navy. Come on, it's not, they're not going to, let's see what happens, but I don't have faith in it.
So not just looking into to Kyle's death, but just for future to make sure that protocols are in place that has some outside consultation, or I guess even from Congress with and credit to Congressman Chris Smith for doing all the work he has to this point. He's done great work. So just looking into Kyle's death, but also making sure that there are protocols in place that are followed.
So many things going wrong, like they're cheating with the guys through. Like you think that, oh, it's just about how good you are with those tests now. There's this thing called an O course that they have to go through, and they have to pass it twice out of 3 times. It's not even digital. There's someone standing there writing the scores. So basically, if you're an officer, you're favored, and enlisted, which my son was. There's, and if you're well-liked, or if your father is a previous SEAL, you're getting pushed through. So it's not even an electronic eye like you run across, like a 5K run in any town. They're handwriting it in. Like even hit my son's pulse ox. I said, well, how was that documented? Should be on like an iPad technology today. You could write your name, the date, the stamp, the time.
Sure.
Nope. I said, what is it, handwritten in pencil? You could erase it and write the right number now? It's a joke.
Wow.
It's really embarrassing how it's funded a lot by Congress. So Congress has the ability to make sure there's no cheating going on and it's forthright. And like the 20 that secured Hell Week with my son, like I said, one stood up. One's a son of a very popular retired SEAL who has, this podcast. So is he going to say anything? No. He can't.
Yeah, hopefully.
So I said if they all stood together, their strength in numbers, they could all, but they're all afraid. They're threatened not to say anything and told not to say anything.
So would you like to see Congress look into some of those protocols and make any changes to, I guess, for accountability, for procedure?
There needs to be set protocols, independent oversight, not independent meaning the big Navy. It needs to be independent outside the Navy of someone they, hire to look and make sure it's set. And they should know how long's too long. And if someone's spitting out blood, they're supposed to, how are you treating that? How are you treating VED, which is viral gastroenteritis? What are the set protocols for? I ask these questions, I get no answers.
Would you like to see some sort of, medical personnel, a doctor involved in the process with
supposedly
protocols?
There was a doctor there, but I don't know what kind of credentials that doctor has. And there's no nurses there, I believe, and I don't think they're using stethoscopes. Just last week, they weren't using a stethoscope, which can simply hear there's a problem with your lungs, and they should send them to go get checked. Because when I went out there, the commander had the audacity to say to me, well, I heard your son was asked twice to go to medical, and he didn't want to go. Well, I'm like, do you hear yourself? He hadn't slept in 5 days. Does he know what day of the week it is? And why? You can't diagnose yourself. You don't know that your lungs have fluid in it. You don't know what your oxygen level, you don't even know what that means. They're telling him, grind it out. Pain is not what you think it is, on one hand. Then they're telling him, do you want to go to medical? That's the medical team's job. I'm sorry, that's not my son's job.
Yeah, to be able to recognize that in somebody that something doesn't look right here.
Because somebody may not say something because they don't want to be looked at a certain way, like they can't handle what's being asked.
But they also, years past, someone would tell them, go get checked at medical. Now they were making them, either you ring the bell and quit, then you can go to medical, or you can try to continue on and you'll fail for performance.
Wow.
That's what they were doing. And they could say they weren't, but that's what they were doing.
So just protocols that just
need to be there's. I know that has to be hard. I'm not saying it doesn't have to be hard.
Right.
And they were supposed to get exposed to that tear gas, but there's a point where there's exposure and there's a point where it's torture. These men were absolutely tortured. You can't even treat a dog in training that way and leave him in a cage or the barracks to die without someone being in jail or in trouble. So it's a year later and no one's in trouble. That's disgusting.
Find a way to install the proper training to get them ready, but also be humane in the medical part of it to make sure that they're physically able to handle everything and that they're not ill.
The only thing that I do hear that they put in place, which I shocked that it wasn't there, that there's 24-hour monitoring medically for the men. Because when my son secured at, let's say, 10 o'clock, I spoke to him 11 o'clock their time. It was 2 o'clock New Jersey time. He was in very bad condition. I heard it over the phone. But they sent the medical team home at noon. And there was no one on base. And a man did call. A 21-year-old called. I spoke to him. He called the Bud's medical team, and they're told, I think they signed something that they can't go outside Bud's medical because then they get dropped. Because they don't want the world to know the condition of the men. In a sense, I get that because they're used to the training. But in another sense, if you're going to let the team go, they have no choice to help themselves. But they were told if they call 911, he would get dropped.
Wow. Wow.
And he chose not to be dropped. He thought he would lay down and get better. Well, he laid down, and the blood in his lungs cut off his oxygen. And he died in front of a 19-year-old and a 21-year-old in the barracks. Oh, and the commander bleached the barracks before NCIS got there. How convenient was that for him?
Regina, I want to continue this discussion, certainly this part of the conversation. I have to head to a quick break. Can you stay with us?
Sure.
More Short Time with Vin and Dave and Regina Mullen of Manalapan right after this.
Hi, this is Christy Pierce-Rampone, former U.S. women's soccer team captain, Olympic gold medalist, World Cup champion, and Point Borough High School alum. And you're listening to Short Time with Vin and Dave on 94.3 The Point. Tune in for some real conversation with Dave and Vin. You don't want to miss this.
Whether you're in the early stages of investing, getting ready to retire, or planning your estate, you need a financial planner who will guide you on a clear path with honesty and transparency. Shoreline Wealth Management understands that you are more than your money, and they strive to help you realize your best life as they align your finances with your goals. Best of all, Shoreline's straightforward approach will include you in the process. Shoreline Wealth Management is your financial anchor. Visit shorelinewealth.com for more information. Shorelinewealth.com. Securities offered through LPL Financial, member FINRA, SIPC.
Hey, this is UFC Championship fighter and Toms River High School East alumni Frankie Edgar, and you're listening to Short Time with Vin and Dave on 94.3 The Point. Dave and Vin, these guys are the buzz.
Welcome back to Short Time with Vin and Dave. Vin Ebenau, Dave Crossan with you. With us here this morning is Regina Mullen of Manalapan. But a year ago this time, her son Kyle, 24 years old, had just finished up Hell Week training and tragically passed away a short time later, and that's what we were getting into as we went to a quick break. Regina, and looking back and knowing everything you do now, everything you've learned through any number of channels, NCIS, the Navy, Congress, through your diligent efforts to try and track down as many answers as possible into what happened to Kyle and why, what have you learned of what happened to Kyle that day? Any conversations you had with him, and then certainly in the days, weeks, months, and now year that have followed into trying to put together the pieces into what was going on with Kyle at that point and who was or wasn't doing anything?
Well, the bar was raised, like I said, for the training. So he went through apparently different training than original SEALs did. But regardless of that, he got through it. And the main thing that killed him is the medical team missed their job. They didn't send him to get help. They knew he was compromised. They gave him oxygen. The medical team failed him. He would be alive here today if he was intubated like the other man was. That called 911. He would be here today because it was acute pneumonia that killed him. That's treatable.
And I know you're also a nurse and everything. So I mean, in the condition that you surmised that he was in at the time with what he was going through, talking on the phone and what you learned. I mean, just what should have happened once blood was filling up or water in the lungs?
Once he secured Hell Week, when they supposedly checked him, they said his pulse ox was whatever, 98. That's nearly impossible. I don't believe them. They're liars. But if they would have checked with a stethoscope, they would have heard his lungs compromised. They knew all the men put him first to get checked. They didn't check him. And if, really, quite frankly, all the men should be checked really extensively, whether it's urine analysis, blood work, and checking their chests because of what they just been through.
Sure.
And had they been medically monitored, he'd be alive today. There's no question.
So should there be something before Hell Week even starts, some sort of round of medical tests that everybody should have to go through, check where you're at that point, and then do something on a daily basis at the end of the day or end of the week?
I guess they do certain to get into the Navy. And like he did have that enlarged heart, and everybody's asking me about, I mean, I don't want to make it about that, the vaccine, but he never had an enlarged heart. So was that caused by it? I don't know. That is a problem that needs to be looked at too, but I don't want to get into that. That didn't kill him.
I understand.
He definitely died from pneumonia, and I think they're given a different antibiotic now. If the medical team is sending him to get further checked, and then they either get medically rolled back. If they get 3 tries through, that's all they had to do is get him checked and get medically rolled back for a second time. You get 3 tries. You get 3 medical rollbacks before then you're dropped to in the Navy. You owe the Navy time for just signing up.
Through all the phone calls that you've made, the emails, the messages that you've put out there, I know you mentioned in the last segment Congressman Chris Smith has been a big help and continues to be. What have you learned about what happened to Kyle, and what are some answers that are a little fuzzy that you've received or don't understand, or some answers that you are pursuing or have pursued but just haven't gotten a full answer or any clarity on yet?
Well, I know I want set protocols. I know I want to know what the treatment is for the diseases that they get. What happens when they don't follow the protocols? Some of the instructors that were instructing my son one was already under investigation. Why was he instructing my son? I don't know. The commander, why was he still commanding when my son died? Any other profession, they're pulled from command until the investigation is complete. He shouldn't be promoted. He should be in big trouble. It's under his command. A man died unnecessarily. So that's not happening. I don't know why. There's this thing called the Ferris Doctrine. Unfortunately, I learned about it, where Congress must define incidents of service because it will hold people accountable. Where right now, if atrocities like this, medical negligence or certain things happen in the military, families can't sue the military. They could try, but most of them's denied because it says incidents of service. It dates back from the 1950s, a doctrine, but Supreme Court kicked it back to Congress to define the term incidents of service. It was for when you were in combat. Right now, this is non-combat training. This is not incidents of service. This is neglect that a man died. And it's unfortunately happening throughout all branches of the military. There is negligence, and not just medical, just a lot of different negligence and abuse, and they're getting away with it. And that's a problem. You can't get away with things like that because there's civil law and military law, and unfortunately they're not aligned enough where they need to have people get in trouble.
Have you had many conversations with other, moms, parents out there who've had sons or daughters in the military who've either passed away or who have become ill? And what are some of the things that you've learned from them that are either similar to what happened to Kyle or different? But
one recently, it's 2 years ago, and Stacy Beals in North Jersey, her son died in training for Marine training, and basically he didn't get water, and he was found hours later. I just don't know the particulars, but I know that happened. So that's an atrocity. That's a problem.
Yeah.
That shouldn't be considered incidents of service. There's another woman I spoke to. Her son ratted out somebody in I think it's the Army, where they were selling drugs, and then somehow that person got discharged but got back on base and cut the guy's neck off with a box cutter in the barracks.
Oh, wow.
There's another there's another woman I'm friends with I spoke to her plenty of times. Her son hit his head doing something. It was in the Army. I think it was maybe the Marines. And he hit his head. He was getting headaches. He went to go get medically checked, and they sent him back, gave him like Tylenol. He went twice. They sent him back to the barracks. They didn't find him till days later. They were spraying from breeze in the barracks. That poor woman, that's terrible. Days later. They don't even know the day that he died because they didn't find him till days later, and the medical team neglected him as well. My son was neglected, definitely, because he should have been treated for pneumonia. So those are the ones that come to the top of my head. That's disgusting enough. Yeah.
What were the conversations with Kyle like during Hell Week? Anytime you were on the phone with him, did he express to you any concerns with what was going on, how he was feeling, if he had heard or seen anything that didn't look right or sound right?
Yeah, well, he loved all the guys. He liked it out there, but he
There you
did
go.
tell me that a lot of guys out there were doing the steroids, which they tried to blame on him because they found needles in his car, but he was sharing his car with other men. So my comment to that was, if I lend my car to someone and they smoke cigarettes and they leave their pack of cigarettes in the car, does that mean I smoke? No, that's ridiculous. 2 toxicologies, full extensive, and they even tested his brain tissue. There was no steroids whatsoever, but they had the audacity to send those needles back to me.
Oh,
That's terrible.
Wow.
When they knew he didn't do it, and they sent them back to me. That's terrible. I had to open that. So they put that out there, that seed out there, and he was not a cheater, and he didn't do it.
Has NCIS or anybody been able to dive into those allegations and clear Kyle of any of that? Have you heard anything?
That was when I was glad Chris Smith came with me to the line of duty investigation, because they were going to have a press release, and it wasn't going to say anything about he didn't do steroids, had nothing to do with it. And I had to fight with them. And then Congress stepped in. Chris Smith said, it's proven fact by all the toxicology and the brain tissue that he didn't do. Why can't you put that in a statement out to the public?
Sure.
It took like 3 hours of really pressing the issue with them. And I didn't find out till like the middle of the night that they were going to add that, wording in there, which is terrible.
Yeah.
Why would I said, you already killed my son. Why can't you clear his name because they tarnished his character? And it took a fight, and Chris Smith helped me with that. I'm very grateful that he helped
glad
me.
that got put in there.
Oh,
Very
sure.
important.
Very important.
Yeah, Chris Smith is certainly fighting for and looking into a lot of different issues related to human rights, domestically and abroad as well.
He was definitely instrumental in helping me, and I'm glad that he came with me, because I don't know if they would have just listened to me.
What would you like to see? Obviously, I know Chris Smith is continuing on this to help find some answers, but overall, what would you like to see Congress, especially with new leadership this year, what would you like to see Congress do in the handling of Kyle's death investigation, but also with looking into what's going on and what needs to be changed?
Well, the timeline of how long it takes is actually absurd, but we have to wait for them to get a chance to see what their command investigation says. I think, like I've been saying from day one, it needs independent oversight outside the Navy, and those protocols set, incidents of the service defined from Congress. Instructors can instruct if they're under investigation. They should be pulled. They should be reprimanded. Like I said, my son doesn't get a do-over for his life, and the SEALs already should be embarrassed with themselves. They can't investigate it, and they got a do-over for the big Navy now to come in and do it. And the steroid problem is supposedly a problem. A guy said it's out there, and it's a big money maker, and it's like having a mafia out there, and it's going to be hard for me to do anything about that. My son wasn't doing it, and that's a separate issue, but I don't know how they fix that.
Yes, there's certainly a lot that still has to be looked into.
The bacterial level
to find out what's going on.
The protocol, the cheating with everything needs to be digitized.
Sure.
It's ridiculous. You would think, elite of the Navy, funded billions of dollars from Congress, everything would be, dot your T's and, dot your I's and cross your T's. You would have it fine-tooth comb, run like that. It's run like, it was terrible. That I can't even believe it wasn't medically monitored, and the medical team was sent home at noon when the men went through 5 days of no sleep, frigid weather, and barely eating and sleeping. How do you do that? You can't get refugees from the water, and they're sent to the hospital, medically treated,
Yeah.
The refugees coming across, they get probably put up in 5-star hotels and medical, checked.
But you bring up a valid point. Somebody going through that whole process like your son did,
come on.
There should have been the attention for an extended period of time going through all that, any of the men.
Yeah, and they immediately are doing it now. But I had to scream and yell out there for them to even do that. I said they should all be put in the same room. They should all have medical beds where the head of the bed is up, so you don't laying down, you're not choking on your own,
Right.
Yeah,
bodily
that
fluids.
makes sense.
And my son, it's just how I had to scream and yell at them to get that done is a little ridiculous.
Regina, over the last year, what has it meant? Obviously, it's not just, the Manalapan community or Monmouth County, but New Jersey, and I'm sure others, as they've heard this story across the country. What has it meant to get feedback or for people to reach out, either in support or, seeing how they could help? What has this all meant to you and to your family, just with people reaching out, looking to help or looking to learn more about Kyle?
Well, I got to know how much people really cared about him, and people try to tell me information through the internet and things like that. And unfortunately, I learned throughout the military all the atrocities going on, which I didn't want to learn about, and I know about. I just know I miss him terribly. And so do many. He had so many friends between Yale and Monmouth College and my town and across all of New Jersey, and all the men that he affected that are really getting affected, that have PTSD from it all and night terrors from what they witnessed. A good man, and they reach out to me. Yeah, it's kind of nice too. I just wish he was here.
Sure, of course. It's a young man who made such an impact on so many different lives and communities, from Manalapan to Yale and to our country. A true patriot and a hero who should be honorably remembered
and we admire
for
your
all
strength,
time.
too, going through this and everything that you're trying to do and bring to light.
It's the only way for the public to know is for me to do something. And I say, if no one's in trouble, expect a march on Washington, because, I see it forever, all little things out there. And this is a big one. It's a big problem. Someone should be in trouble, big trouble. It should never happen again to not only my son, any other child going there,
Right.
or across the military, the atrocities that are going on. It's a big problem, and people should really care.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And hopefully the truth comes out across everything that happened, not just with Kyle, but everything that's going on. And long term, that there are proper protocols put in place for medical and for training, that members of all branches of the military can be properly trained for domestic service or service abroad in combat, and everything along those lines, but also that they are protected as well.
Utmost medical support. If you're going through all that training, rigorous training, and those, like the Marine training, there's Green Beret training, there's the SEAL training, they should have. It shouldn't even be an afterthought.
I hear you.
I mean, it just really shouldn't. I don't even believe I'm sitting here having to say that it should have been there already. It's just insane.
Should have a strong military, but also protected military as well.
Our men are not protected right now. Mm-hmm.
Regina, as we close out here this morning, close out on, I guess, a reflection note, sort of a celebration of Kyle's life here. Just what were some of the fun things that he liked to do, some goofy things at home with his friends, stuff that was just like, oh, that's just Kyle being Kyle.
He liked to dance. He liked to sing.
He said he could do a split.
He could do a split.
That's impressive.
It is.
Very impressive, yeah. He liked to dance. He sang a lot. He was always happy. All the guys out there told me he was happy going through all the exercise. He liked competition. You couldn't walk in my door without playing darts or playing some game in the backyard, spike ball, make me play it, and I was not good at it. He'd be yelling at me.
It takes practice.
Basketball, soccer, in the pool. Like, he just was a very happy-go-lucky, fun-loving guy, and you can count on him. Anyone can call him up, and he was everybody's friend. I guess he made everybody feel like he was their best friend.
Sure.
Like, everyone said, oh, he was my best friend. Like, how many best friends do you have? I guess he made everybody feel that way. And he was the kind of guy that everybody in the military and Manalapan and anyone has ever spoke to me just said he was their best friend, and you knew he can always count on him. He didn't complain. He just didn't complain. And he was possessed on being a Navy SEAL. He wanted to be on the elite team.
Yeah.
He really adored all those guys that he met through it. They were all like him. High achievers, educated athletes, just trying to do the right thing.
Sure.
Yeah. And you would think, the support, medical support would have been there, and I don't know, someone would be in trouble right now.
Regina, hopefully, over time you get the answers you certainly not only deserve but need to have that clarity for yourself, but also that get the answers that are needed to make sure that the men and women in the military are prepared and ready to serve, but also physically, mentally, and emotionally protected.
Yes, they must be.
Thank you for coming in this morning and giving us an update. And definitely feel free to keep in touch. We'll have you back on again at some point in the future.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That is Regina Mullen of Manalapan. More Short Time with Vin and Dave right after this.
Hey, what do you hear? What do you say? This is comedian Big D Batetto. You're listening to Short Time with Vin and Dave on 94.3 The Point. Who wants coffee? Anybody want coffee?
Let's face it, investment concepts and financial planning can be very intimidating and confusing. Shoreline Wealth Management addresses that feeling head on. Their goal is to educate you while offering financial advice without buzzwords and jargon. Shoreline includes you in the process and makes you comfortable every step of the way. Shoreline Wealth Management is your financial anchor. Visit shorelinewealth.com for more information and start your financial journey with comfort and security today. Shoreline Wealth Management with offices in Manchester and Manahawkin. Securities offered through LPL Financial, member FINRA, SIPC.
Hi, this is high performance executive coach Dana Cavalier and former director of strength and conditioning for the New York Yankees. And you're listening to Short Time with Vin and Dave on 94.3 The Point. It's always great to hang with champions, and these two guys are champions.